The cool evening air brushed against my skin as I sat in the backyard, lost in thought. The gentle bubbling of the hot tub nearby provided a soothing backdrop to the unusual quiet of the house. Normally, the place would be buzzing with activity, especially when Lisa, my stepmom, threw one of her famous parties. But tonight it was just me, savoring a glass of wine I'd snuck from the fridge. I'm Jake, by the way. 22, fresh out of college, and living at home while I figure out my next move. It's not ideal, but it has its perks, like quiet evenings like this one. Or so I thought. The sound of the sliding door opening broke through my reverie. I turned to see Lisa step out, followed by a couple of her friends. They were all giggling softly, drinks in hand, clearly in high spirits. It didn't take long for them to spot me. "Jake, what are you doing out here all alone?" Lisa called out, her voice carrying a hint of playfulness that I'd grown accustomed to over the years. I shrugged, not really sure how to respond. I hadn't expected company, especially not hers. As they drew closer, I noticed they were all wearing bikinis under their robes. It was clear they had plans for the hot tub. One of Lisa's friends, I think her name was Megan, smiled at me. "You should join us," she suggested, her tone light and teasing. Before I could formulate a response, Lisa was beside me, plucking the wine glass from my hand. Her eyes sparkled with mischief as she said, "Come on, don't be shy. It'll be fun." "The water's perfect tonight." I hesitated, feeling a strange mix of excitement and apprehension. Something about the way they were all looking at me made it hard to say no. After a moment's pause, I found myself nodding and standing up. Megan and Lisa's other friend, Sarah, I remembered, giggled as they slipped out of their robes and climbed into the warm water. Their laughter filled the night air, infectious and inviting. I stood by the edge for a second, still feeling a bit out of place. Lisa gave me a knowing look, patting the spot beside her. "Come on in, the water's fine," she said with a wink. Unable to resist any longer, I stepped into the hot tub. The warm water enveloped me, instantly soothing away tension I hadn't even realized I was carrying. I settled into my spot, acutely aware of Lisa's presence beside me. "Relax," Sarah said, her voice soft and encouraging. "We're all here to have a good time." Lisa handed me another glass of wine, her fingers brushing against mine for just a moment longer than necessary. I wasn't sure if it was the warmth of the water, the alcohol, or the company, but I started to feel more at ease. The conversation flowed easily, punctuated by laughter and playful splashing. But beneath it all, there was an undercurrent of tension that I couldn't quite ignore. Every now and then, I'd catch one of them looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. As the minutes ticked by, I noticed Lisa moving closer to me. Her shoulder was now gently pressing against mine as she spoke, and her hand would occasionally rest on my arm, lingering there. I tried to play it cool, but I could feel my heart racing. Megan and Sarah were watching us, their smiles seeming to dare me to make a move. But I stayed still, unsure of where this was all going. The atmosphere had shifted, becoming charged with an energy I couldn't quite name. Lisa leaned in close, her breath warm against my ear as she whispered, "You seem tense, Jake. Why don't you let us help you relax?" Her words sent a shiver down my spine. I glanced at Megan and Sarah, who were now moving closer, their eyes locked on me. Megan smiled, her lips curving in a way that made my stomach flip. The combination of the warm water, the wine, and their closeness was making everything feel hazy. Lisa's lips brushed against my cheek, teasing and playful. Megan and Sarah giggled softly, and I could feel the tension building with every passing second. It was as if the world outside had ceased to exist. All that mattered was this moment, the heat, the closeness, and the unspoken promises hanging in the air between us. Lisa's hand slid down my arm, her touch more deliberate now. It was clear this wasn't just innocent fun anymore. Megan and Sarah seemed to be in on it too, their gazes lingering, their laughter soft and inviting. I could hardly think straight as Lisa's next whisper hung in the air. "We've been waiting for this, she murmured, her words leaving me breathless. The water swirled around us, warm and inviting, but it was nothing compared to the heat building between all of us. Lisa's lips found my neck, soft and teasing, as her fingers traced lazy patterns across my chest. Megan and Sarah were close now too, their hands exploring, their lips occasionally brushing my skin. I felt completely surrounded. Everywhere I turned, there was a soft touch, a warm body pressing closer. It was almost overwhelming, but in the best possible way. Megan leaned in, her hands sliding up my chest as she kissed me. Her lips were gentle but firm, and I couldn't help but kiss her back, my hands finding their way to her waist almost of their own accord. Sarah was there too, her fingers tracing down my arm, her lips brushing against my jaw. "You deserve this," she said softly, her eyes meeting mine with a look that was both playful and intense. Lisa pulled back just enough to look at me, her eyes dark and full of desire. She smiled, a slow, teasing smile that made my stomach flip. "Are you enjoying this?" she asked, her voice low and sultry. I couldn't speak, couldn't find the words to answer her. All I could do was nod, my heart racing as her lips met mine in a slow, lingering kiss. As the kiss deepened, I felt Lisa's hand on my thigh, moving with purpose. Understanding her intent, I shifted to help her, and soon found myself free of my swimwear. The sensation of the warm water against my bare skin was exhilarating. Taking a deep breath, I decided to take the next step. My hands found Lisa's body, and with gentle movements, I helped her out of her swimsuit. Megan and Sarah quickly followed suit, and soon we were all bare in the bubbling water. I couldn't help but admire their bodies, each beautiful in their own unique way. Lisa's curves, Megan's toned physique, Sarah's graceful form, it was almost too much to take in. What followed was a blur of sensations. Soft skin, warm water, gentle touches that grew bolder with each passing moment. I found myself tasting, touching, exploring. First Lisa, then Megan, then Sarah. Each experience unique, each moment burning itself into my memory. At one point, I stood up, the cool night air a stark contrast to the warm water. Lisa and Megan moved closer, their attention focused on me in a way that made my head spin. The dual sensation of their mouths was unlike anything I'd ever experienced before. The intensity built until I couldn't hold back any longer. With a groan, I let go, the release washing over me in waves. As the moment passed, I sank back into the water, feeling both exhausted and exhilarated. As the night went on, everything started to calm down. The hot tub still bubbled, but the frantic energy from earlier had faded. Lisa moved back a little, her hand still gently touching me, but now there was a different look in her eyes. Softer, more relaxed. Megan and Sarah were quiet now, just smiling as they sat there enjoying the warm water. It felt like the rush of excitement had passed, and we were all just soaking in the afterglow of the moment. After a while, Lisa sighed, giving me a soft smile. "That was fun," she said quietly, her voice warm but calm now. "We'll have to do this again sometime." Megan and Sarah nodded in agreement, their playful smiles still there, but everything felt a little more peaceful. They slowly got out of the hot tub, wrapping themselves in towels and giggling quietly as they headed back inside. Lisa was the last to leave, giving me one last look over her shoulder, her eyes twinkling. "Good night, Jake," she said softly, before disappearing inside with her friends. I stayed in the hot tub a little longer, letting the warm water soothe me. My heart was still racing, but I knew everything had come to a close. The night had been unexpected, intense, and unforgettable. As I leaned back and closed my eyes, I couldn't help but smile to myself. Things would never be quite the same after tonight, and I found myself both nervous and excited about what the future might hold. Little did I know. This was just the beginning of a summer that would change everything. I woke up the next morning with a slight headache and a flood of memories from the night before. For a moment, I wondered if it had all been a dream. The hot tub, Lisa, Megan, and Sarah. It seemed too unreal to have actually happened. But as I became more alert, I knew it had been real. Very real. The house was quiet as I made my way downstairs. I half expected to find Lisa in the kitchen, but it was empty. A note on the counter caught my eye. On out for brunch with the girls. Be back later. L. I breathed a sigh of relief. I wasn't quite ready to face Lisa yet. I needed time to process everything that had happened. As I sipped my coffee, my mind wandered back to the events of last night. The way Lisa had looked at me. The feeling of Megan's lips on mine, Sarah's soft touch, it was all so vivid. But now, in the harsh light of day, I felt a twinge of guilt. Lisa was my stepmom, after all, and Megan and Sarah were her friends. What had I gotten myself into? The sound of the front door opening snapped me out of my thoughts. Lisa walked in, looking fresh and relaxed. She smiled when she saw me. But there was a hint of something else in her eyes. Nervousness? Excitement? "Morning, Jake," she said, her voice casual. "Sleep well?" I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Lisa busied herself making a cup of tea, the silence between us growing heavier by the second. Finally, she turned to face me. "About last night," she began, and I felt my heart rate spike. "I hope you don't feel uncomfortable." I shook my head. "No, not uncomfortable. Just surprised, I guess." Lisa's smile softened. "It wasn't planned, if that's what you're thinking. It just happened. We talked for a while, clearing the air." Lisa assured me that Megan and Sarah were discreet, and that what happened in the hot tub would stay between us. She also made it clear that while she didn't regret what happened, she understood if I wanted to pretend it never occurred. But did I want to pretend it never happened? As the days passed, I found myself thinking about that night more and more. The way Lisa had touched me, the sounds Megan had made, the taste of Sarah's lips, it was all seared into my memory. A week went by, and things seemed to return to normal. Lisa and I fell back into our usual routine, with no mention of that night. But there was an undercurrent of tension now, a charged energy that hadn't been there before. Then, one evening, everything changed again. I was in my room, working on my laptop, when there was a soft knock at the door. Lisa poked her head in, looking a bit nervous. "Jake, can we talk?" I nodded, closing my laptop as she came in and sat on the edge of my bed. She was wearing a silky robe, and I couldn't help but remember how she'd looked that night in the hot tub. "I've been thinking," she said, her voice low, "about that night. And I was wondering if maybe you'd like to explore things a bit more." My heart started racing. "What do you mean?" I asked, though I had a pretty good idea. Lisa moved closer, her hand resting on my knee. "I mean, if you're comfortable with it, we could see where this goes. Just the two of us this time." I knew I should say no. This was my stepmom, after all. But the memory of her touch, the look in her eyes, it was too much to resist. "Okay," I heard myself say. "Let's see where this goes." What followed was a night of exploration and discovery. Lisa and I took our time, learning each other's bodies, finding out what made the other gasp and moan. It was different from the frenzied energy of the hot tub night, slower, more intimate. As we lay together afterward, Lisa traced patterns on my chest. "This changes things," she murmured. I nodded, knowing she was right. Our relationship had shifted, and there was no going back. Over the next few weeks, Lisa and I fell into a new routine. During the day, we maintained our normal stepmom-stepson relationship. But at night, behind closed doors, we explored this new facet of our connection. It wasn't just physical, though. We talked more, shared things we never had before. I learned about her past, her dreams, her fears. She listened as I talked about my uncertainties about the future, my ambitions, my insecurities. One night, as we lay tangled together, Lisa propped herself up on an elbow and looked at me seriously. "Jake, I need to ask you something," she said, her voice hesitant. "Anything," I replied, curious about her sudden seriousness. "How would you feel about including others sometimes?" I blinked, surprised. "You mean like Megan and Sarah?" Lisa nodded. "They've been asking about you, you know. I think they're interested in repeating that night in the hot tub." I took a moment to consider. The idea was certainly exciting, but I also felt a twinge of jealousy at the thought of sharing Lisa. "We don't have to," Lisa said quickly. Noticing my hesitation, "I'm happy with just us." I just thought, well, variety can be fun sometimes. I pulled her close, kissing her deeply. "Let's try it," I said when we finally broke apart. "But you're always my number one." Lisa's smile was radiant. "And you're mine," she whispered. The next weekend, Megan and Sarah came over for what Lisa called a private party. The nervous energy from that first night was gone, replaced by excited anticipation. We started in the living room. Music playing softly in the background as we sipped wine and flirted. It wasn't long before clothes started coming off and hands began to wander. This time I was more confident, more in control. I took charge, guiding the women to the bedroom, where we spent hours exploring and pleasuring each other in every combination imaginable. As the night wore on, I found myself marveling at how different each woman was. Lisa was passionate and intense, Megan was playful and adventurous, and Sarah was gentle and sensual. Together, they created an experience that was beyond anything I could have imagined. In the quiet aftermath, as we all lay catching our breath, I realized that my life had taken a turn I never could have predicted. But as I looked at Lisa, her eyes meeting mine with a mix of love and desire, I knew I wouldn't change a thing. The weeks turned into months, and our unconventional arrangement continued. Lisa and I remained the core, our connection growing stronger with each passing day. Megan and Sarah joined us occasionally, always bringing a spark of excitement and novelty. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were moments of jealousy, of doubt, of fear. What if someone found out? What if one of us developed stronger feelings for someone else? We had to navigate these choppy waters carefully, always communicating openly and honestly. One particularly memorable night, after Megan and Sarah had left, Lisa and I were cuddling on the couch. She turned to me, her expression serious. "Jake, I need to tell you something," she said, her voice trembling slightly. My heart skipped a beat. Was this it? Was she going to end things? I think I'm falling in love with you," she whispered. Relief flooded through me, followed quickly by a surge of emotion. "Lisa," I said, cupping her face in my hands, "I think I've been in love with you for a while now." We made love that night with a new intensity, our emotions running high. Afterward, as we lay in each other's arms, we talked about the future. We knew our relationship was unconventional, that many people wouldn't understand. But we were committed to making it work. As summer turned to fall, we settled into a new normal. To the outside world, we were still just stepmother and stepson. But in private, we were partners, lovers, confidants. Megan and Sarah remained part of our lives, but more as occasional spice than a regular feature. One crisp autumn evening, as Lisa and I sat on the back porch watching the sunset, she turned to me with a smile. "You know," she said, her eyes twinkling, "I never thought that night in the hot tub would lead to all this." I laughed, pulling her close. "Me neither, but I'm glad it did." As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, I reflected on the journey of the past few months. From that unexpected night in the hot tub to this moment, it had been a whirlwind of discovery, pleasure, and love. I didn't know what the future held for us. There would undoubtedly be challenges ahead. But as I held Lisa in my arms, feeling the warmth of her body against mine, I knew that whatever came our way, we'd face it together. The night air was growing cool, but neither of us moved to go inside. We were content to sit there, wrapped in each other's embrace, savoring the moment and the promise of many more to come. As stars began to appear in the darkening sky, I made a silent wish. Not for anything to change, but for things to stay just as they were. Because somehow, against all odds, I had found everything I never knew I wanted. And it all started with an unexpected evening in a hot tub.
Thanks for joining me on this wild ride. If you loved this story, make sure to give the video a thumbs up and subscribe for more shocking tales of family drama and Reddit gold. Want to hear another crazy story? Click the video right here. Until next time, stay curious.